All right, hello YouTube. So I'm just working on this beautiful Ford Freestar. I thought it'd be a good lesson about tie rod ends and toe. So check this out right here. I'm gonna do my best to show you how this tie rod is loose. So hear the looseness, kind of the rattle. Compare that to the rear. Thud. And this has got kind of clank. That was the first clue that there was something loose. The next thing, I'm going to move the wheel 12 and 6, right? Like this. And then also 3 and 9, like kind of sideways. When I move it 3 and 9, I've got a looseness. It's always really hard to catch that on camera, right? But so what I'll do is I'll come on the inside. Sorry if you're on your back in the driveway. But if I move this left to right like I'm steering, I can see that's what's happening is the knuckle is moving, but the tie rod is actually not moving, right? So I'm not doing a ton of force. I'm just doing enough to get that looseness right there. Definitely hard to see, right? But this knuckle is moving and this tie rod is still, which tells me it's that joint right there. And I'm replacing it. This is the joint right here. This one you can tell is pretty tight. Won't really move. Okay, so this is not a hard job. So here's what the new one will do. Go right in place. And I think this is fairly self-explanatory, but here's where it's going to get a bit technical. Because this is threaded on this outer tie rod end, this is your inner tie rod, and that's threaded male. So if I go to loosen this and replace this tie rod, it's going to be very difficult to set this exactly where it needs to be. If I thread it in too far, it's going to mess up the alignment. And if I don't thread it in enough, it's going to mess up the alignment. So I want to give you kind of like some tricks on what I would do to be able to replace this and at least get the alignment really close. And then, you know, I'll get it, I would sublet this repair out to an alignment shop, or if you're doing it DIY, you know, try to get an alignment done. But it'll be, if you do it this way, it'll be really close. This is how they used to do alignments back in the day. There's a couple things we could do. If you look at these threads, I could count those, right? And then when I thread the new one on, I can make sure the same number of threads are showing. And that'll get you pretty close, actually. But there's one negative. You're assuming that this aftermarket tie rod I'm about to put on there with the blue ball joint is exactly the same length from here to here, right? So if it's got an OEM tie rod on, and you replace it with an OEM replacement, you can probably count the threads and be really, really close. Other thing that you could do is once I loosen this lock nut, and this is actually how I'm gonna mostly do this job, I'm gonna loosen this lock nut just a bit right there. Okay, and then I'm just gonna maybe kind of snug it back up. I'm gonna leave the lock nut right there. And then when I spin this tie rod off to the right, when I put the new tie rod on, I'm just going to make it lightly touch the lock nut and then snug the lock nut up. And it should also be pretty close. The other thing that I've done is when I spin this tie rod end off, I'll count the number of times I turn it, and then I'll spin it back on the same number of times. Right? So that's kind of the gist of what you can do to get it close. But I wanted to step it up one more level and just help you guys understand all what this is doing here. Now I'm going to be doing both tie rods. They're actually both loose, interestingly enough. You'll listen. And this one you might be able to just barely get a look. Yeah, the problem is when I go to move this, I move myself, so I know I'm throwing my camera off. All right, because I'm doing both tie rods, and I guess even if you're doing one that's similar, I want to give you a quick lesson. Here's my feet. Positive toes like this, toed in. Negative toe will be like this, toed out. If I go and I disconnect or I replace these tie rods, and let's just say I don't have them adjusted right, I end up with negative toe like this, that's going to scrub across the ground, both tires. And then we're going to end up with this inside edge wear, okay? Or let's say we do it the other way, and I have positive toe. That's going to kind of scrub the outside edges. Like picture your shoe would wear out here. Well, that's going to cause outside tire wear. And so one of the ways you could check for toe wear is you can run your hand across this and then run your hand across it this way. And if you notice, actually going downward, it's pretty smooth, but going up, it's actually catching my glove a bit. It's just a little feathered. And so, you know, this has definitely had a little bit of toe wear in the past. That makes sense because the tie rod's loose. You know, this tire is gonna tend to move around a little bit while driving because of the looseness. So the next step will be kind of measuring what we have for total toe. I mean, that one's a little harder to explain. So what I've done is just set a couple tires here to kind of replicate this. Remember, positive and negative. All right, but the key is actually going to be to measure front to rear. So if you look at my feet like this measurement in the front is going to be less, and the measurement in the back is going to be more. So what we ideally want to do is pick a tread groove. Usually we'd say like somewhere around the middle, but like in this case, let's go with this groove. This might be a little tough to do one-handed. Pull the tape out a little more. If I do this tread groove right on the edge to this one, and let's just call that at 30, right? That'd be the rear. Then I'd go to the front, and I would do the same thing. Got to make sure we're in the same tread groove. And look, let's call that at 29.5. That would be a half an inch of difference, and it was shorter in the front, right? So that'd be a half a degree of positive toe, or sorry, a half an inch of positive toe. That would actually be really bad. So on the alignment machine, that would be a 0.5 total toe. Makes sense? Because we just had a difference in that measurement. Now let's just say I were to have 29 in the back and 28 in the front. That would be a full 1 inch of positive toe. Or let's just say I had 30 in the back and 31 in the front. That would be 1 inch of negative toe. Okay, so that's total toe right there. But I want to make sure you understand, total toe doesn't have anything to do with which way the steering wheel is pointed. So if you're trying to get a steering wheel to be level again, this is not really how we do this. An unlevel steering wheel, like a steering wheel that's crooked, doesn't cause toe wear, but the customer will complain about it, and they may say my steering wheel's off center, or they may call it a pull, which it's not really a pull, but customers use the wrong terms all the time. Right, so when we're looking at positive toe, it's very simple. It's all for tire wear. If you have 0 toe, 0 inches of toe, that means you're perfectly parallel. Your two tires are parallel, right? So remember, this one is a little toed in, right? So if I were to adjust it like this, just like that, that actually probably looks toed out, right? But if I'm going to get these exactly parallel by that tie rod adjustment, and they were to both be going in the same direction, that's going to have no toe wear. Okay, so that's the goal. Now, sometimes the spec will call to toe them in a little bit, and that helps the car track straighter. But for toe wear, straight up 0 inches of toe and 0 inches of toe is going to be the ideal. Now, if you were to have, let's say, the total toe is 0, and that's the middle number on the alignment machine. Your total toe 0, cool. That tells you that tells you you don't have tire wear. That's great. But if you have positive here and negative here, let's just say this was positive half an inch and this was negative half an inch, that car doesn't really need a toe adjustment as much as, at least for total toe, as much as it just needs this one to be moved to the left and this one to be moved to the left. That's more for like a steering wheel off center. So if your steering wheel is center and they're both doing this procedure is like totally different. What you really need to do is get up in the vehicle, get your steering wheel dead straight. You really on the alignment machine. You could try to do this in the driveway, but if you get the steering wheel dead straight, then you're going to adjust this one this way and adjust this one this way. That would be cool, but let me tell you what that would cause. If we had to unthread this tie rod, let me get my light up here. If we had to unthread this tie rod, then we would need to thread this tie rod in, and so you'd have like a very unequal number of threads showing. You can have like, let's say we had 12 threads showing here and 9 threads showing here. That's actually probably pretty close to what it is, just rough looking at it. That's okay. It's not ideal. But you know, that's kind of compensating for most likely what would have happened was where that steering shaft comes down right there. That steering shaft goes to the rack and pinion. Somebody probably disconnected the steering shaft, replaced the rack and pinion, and then put the steering shaft on like a couple splines off, maybe one spline, maybe two spline off. Then you can fine tune it with the tie rods. But you know, you can, but that's not really preferred. What would be more preferred is if you were to get the two tires facing dead straight. If the steering wheel's off center, pop that steering shaft off, center the steering wheel, drop it right back on the rack. That would adjust your steering wheel without having unequal number of threads showing here. All right, so just a little bit of a lesson on that. So really, because this car had a straight steering wheel, I'm not really worried about all that. I'm just worried about getting this set exactly where it was and then verifying the total toe. So just what I taught you back there, I'm gonna do here, which may be really tough to do on camera, but I'm gonna pick this tread groove. I'm gonna pick kind of like the point of one of these because this doesn't have a really nice clean tread groove, so that's kind of a pain. I'm gonna do this, pick the high point, and then on this one, like what would you say, 63 and an eighth of an inch. And we wanna be that exact. I'm gonna say 63 and an eighth, right to that tread groove. Trying to get my lighting right. 63 and an eighth, right there. Okay, and guess what we gotta do in the front? I haven't adjusted this yet, so I have no idea where we're at. Right, get the outside part of that groove. The same one. Oof, you can see this one is pretty far off. I'm like 63 and a half. You know what they say, measure twice, cut once. Let me see if I might have made a little error there. I don't really think so. Okay, on the high point, to the high point. Yeah, I'm getting that same number, 63 and an eighth. In the rear, this one, yeah, 63 and a half. So let's discuss that. Check my toes out. 63 and an eighth in the back, 63 and a half in the front. This thing's toed out. All right, so I actually don't, everything I said about setting the tie rods exactly where they were is kind of, I'm going to set them kind of close, but actually this thing really needs to be aligned. When I'm done, I'll show you kind of where I'm at. So if I were to visualize that, I got to look at this tie rod right here. This tie rod attaches to the back of the knuckle, so the adjustment is to like my heel, right? And if you remember, it was toed out. So what I actually need to do is unthread it a little bit. So if this one had 9 threads showing, I need to unthread it a little and have maybe 10 or 11 threads showing. Maybe I'll do 10 threads showing here, and then on the other side, remember I thought it was about 12 threads, maybe I'll have 13 threads showing there, and that'll get me a little closer to straight ahead, but I don't know exactly where, right? So I'm gonna have to do a little adjustment and do a little measuring and do a little adjustment. And so, yeah, let me knock these tie rod ends out. I'll show you part of that anyway. This will be a video on how to do tie rod ends, but also how to do your own kind of shoestring alignment's what we would call it. You actually take a piece of string and make a mark right here and then pull the string over here, make sure it's not sagging, make a mark there. And then you'd end up making sure that the front and the rear have the same marks. You could literally do this with a string, but I would go ahead and do the tape measure because you don't have to make marks. It's already got marks. All right, so this is, like I said, this is not a hard job. When I go ahead and I pull this cotter pins are one-time use, FYI. So I'm gonna just walk you through one side real quick. Knock the other side out. Once I press those in, slide that little piece of junk out. And I may pull the wheel on this, but I may just try to do it with the wheel off because I got it at full height and I can work under here pretty comfortably. Next thing I need to do is get that castle nut off there. I'm gonna be using an impact. And I'm sorry if you don't have some good tools. Makes your life really difficult, but that one I'm gonna tell you is abnormally easy. And this is like a kind of a friend of a friend. It's a friend of one of my guys who works for me doing labor. And I know that he had some work done on this. So if you look, there's some chew marks on that tie rod. So it's probably somebody not using a 14 or a 13 here. They're probably using like an adjustable, you know, a hillbilly socket set that fits everything type of thing. So because I know they did some work, it looks like they did this axle. This popped off really easy. All right, so that part was like a little unrealistic. I'll even admit to you. But I have a couple videos on how to get those out. This tapered part is not exactly press fit, but you could kind of say press fit into this knuckle. So when you go to pop those out, I got like three different videos on how to do that really clean, from pry bar and hammer to full tie rod puller set. I got like the backyard way and the right way and all that. So that's a separate video. Now what I'm gonna do, I need to spin this off, right? But what I really need to do is hold this, because if I try to spin this, you notice what it's doing to the boot right there? I don't really want to have my boot all twisted up on that rack. So I'm gonna put something on here, lock it down, and then just unthread this, but I think you get the idea. All right, so it's coming off okay. Again, I got this wrench kind of holding this. You could also spin the tie rod and leave the inner tie rod, leave the outer. You know, you can unthread it either way. This has a joint on the inside that's like a ball and socket, so it can spin a bajillion times if you want. No problem, it's not gonna hurt anything. It's just the boot's a little wadded up. So the other thing I could do, or I look up here, it's tough to see that spot. I'm gonna tell you, this one's actually a little more open. If I wanted to, I could pull this little clamp off and I could shoot a little penetrant WD-40 PB blast or something, and that'll help the boot spin. But either way, I'm just gonna hold it because I'm trying to do this really, really smooth. And you can see when I'm holding that and I'm spinning this tie rod off, it's really easy. Now it'd be a lot easier with the wheel off, but I'm gonna keep the wheel on because remember, I wanna get right into those measurements. And if I pull the wheel off and I do the tie rod, then I got to put the wheel back on to get my toe measurements front to rear. Okay. So I'll just spin this off. I'm getting close. All right, just popped off. Now I want to show you something. Notice how easy this moves. That's because it's loose. So some service manuals actually call to spin this, measure the amount of rotating torque, and that'll tell you if the joint's loose, right? But I do it old school. I'll move it. Move the wheel and tire assembly like 3 and 9. That one's loose. Compare it to this one. I actually can't turn the stud. It's going to turn the whole thing. So tighter, nicer. That's the real reason we're doing the job. Loose tie rod end is going to cause that wandering and tire wear and even a clunk when turning left to right. So I'm going to spin this on. It's not greased yet or anything. I'm just going to get it spun up where I left that lock nut, and we should be in the ballpark. Now, if you really understood what I was saying, as I spin this up, to really get rid of that negative toe, I actually need to not spin it up all the way. So what I can do is I can tighten this lock nut just a bit. I'll move it down about that much. That was just a little over a thread. Then I'll spin this up to that new spot. And I want to look at my shoes and help me make sense of this. I didn't wear my nice boots today. I wasn't thinking you're going to be looking at my feet so much. A little self-conscious with my beat up combos, or rather my red backs or something. You would never judge me for my footwear, would you? All right, so that's about where I want it. Although it's kind of like 180 off, but that's okay because when I turn this, that whole inner tie rod will turn as long as I don't wad the boot up. Yeah, it's moving okay. This will be ready to pop in right there. That thing is stiff though, stiffy. All right, sweetheart, there you go. So that'll be ready for the castle nut, boom, and the brand new cotter pin. Cotter pins are one-time use. Okay, remember, here's my feet. So remember how I had 9 threads showing and now I have 10. So notice what that did. If I now have 10, it's 1 thread out. You notice how that kind of pulled the toe in the middle. That made it a little more positive. So I'm just trying to get that negative toe out. I'm going to end up doing more or less the same thing on the other side. Let me get that castle nut on there, get the cotter pin on. I'll do that off video. I realize this video is going to be longer, so I don't need to shortchange you. Honestly, to do this job without impact's going to be a nightmare, because look. I could just pop it a couple times. That hole's not lined up, so I gotta go just a bit more. And this, of course, has a torque spec. That's not exactly the focus of the video. So if you look right there, that cotter pin will take now. So the thing is, with these, if you don't have the impact, you're gonna try to turn this nut by hand and think you're impressing everybody by doing everything really carefully by hand. And that stud is gonna spin and spin and spin, and you're gonna fight it. You're gonna have to try to pry this down. And that does work, by the way. If you put a pry bar from here on the top and catch underneath this strut or something, you can pull that taper into this seat. It will actually help it to stop spinning. But here's my next point, and you can take it for what you want. If you guys are in the East Coast and the Rust Belt and stuff, this job is not gonna go this easy, and I know that because that's actually where I'm from. But I live in Southern California now, so this 20-year-old vehicle, I could basically pull this off pretty easily. It was also worked on, so it might have been loosened up a bit. You can see it's some surface rust, but this is not like an East Coast rot box, okay? I know all about that. Look at these fender liners and this whole fender edge, okay? So if you're in the rusty area, this may be really hard to pull off. They do have the tie rod tool where it'll actually get the end of it. You can put a socket on it and impact it off and spin it, okay? So this is a lesson really on the technical, not giving you the tips and tricks for how to remove the rusty parts. Though, like I said, I promise you, I know about that life. I just don't do that now. So see, I'm paying big taxes for that sunshine and that lack of rain right there. All right, so this one's pretty good. I'm gonna do the other side. It's the same thing, okay? So let me just do that and knock that out. So this side's a little tougher. So just so you know, I got the tie rod puller. I got various different tools to do this, but because I'm replacing that tie rod, I'm just gonna do this down and dirty style, and I'm just gonna knock that thing loose real quick. All right, but like I said, it is stuck. So the down and dirty, I just put the castle nut backwards. I thread it up so it's about flush. And now let's see if I can get this. Okay. If I gotta use the puller, I will. If I gotta pull the wheel, I will. Let me try again. All right, so this thing wants to give me a little bit of a hard time. Again, I could pop the wheel off, and I may, but this tool is gonna cradle the upper part of that knuckle, and then this threaded rod is gonna push right on the stud. It's a KD 3918 if you're looking for one. I know that you couldn't really see that well. It's very tough to do this solo. This is going to be a quick little job, you know, so I didn't get any help or anything, but you can see, pop that now, all right? So now I'll get that tie rod spun and you'll get just the same thing as what you saw over there, but now you can see this kind of in action. This one is actually a bit small for this application, but it's all good. I just got tight and put that tie rod in, that cotter pin in right now. So remember, these lock nuts are still loose, okay? So this is not... You cannot forget to tighten that. That'd be really bad. All right, first check. Dud. You notice how it used to clatter before? That was because loose tie rod ends, so that's part of my verification. Now the next thing, and I have not measured this yet, it's gonna be, remember what we gotta measure, that total toe. So I have a few different tools in my pockets. Let me keep this one, because it's how I'm gonna tighten those lock nuts. And I also need to remember to put grease in it, so typically, I don't like to do video while I'm doing jobs like this, but I know that you're gonna benefit from this. So here we go. Okay, get the tape measure close. Remember, I'm going from there to here, looking about 63. Yeah, it's like 63 right on the money. I don't remember what the numbers were, but I know that's definitely different. Here we go. Outer edge again. Come on, sweetie. And you also got to make sure you hold this kind of level, right? Okay, way the heck off. All right, so this is super toed out. And I expected what I had done to bring it in a little, but that's the thing. I was assuming that these tie rod ends were the exact same dimension, and these are like precision chassis or something, so they're clearly not. All right, so now let's think about this. I was 63 in the back and, like, I don't know, way over 63 in the front. So I'm still toed out, which means I need to bring my heel outward. All right, so if I look at this tie rod, I need to basically unthread this. Right, that's going to show more thread. That's going to lengthen this if you picture it as a turnbuckle. All right, so I can possibly do that by hand, maybe slightly. All right, so I'm loosening that. I've also got the wrench, which I dropped. All right, so let's go. I want to do this kind of even, so I'm going to do a half a turn and then another half a turn. So it'll put me at a whole turn. All right, so that was a whole turn loosen. It's probably going to need more than that. And then this one is the same thing. To lengthen it, I also need to loosen it. So I'm going to do a half and a half. All right, you know it got looser because look, now you can see that's gap showing in the lock nut. So that's just further verification that I spread that turnbuckle, which pushed the heel out and pushed the heel out, and that's going to give us a little closer to zero total toe, a little closer to even, but I don't know how much closer. Let's see. Here we go. Right there. 63 and a quarter. And it's about 60. I'm just going to rough it for now. 63 and a quarter. And honestly, in a lot of ways, this might offend the older crowd, but I like metric tape measures. You know, that's really getting close. 63 and what's that? Under a half. I can count the eighths. 1, 2, that's like 3/8. Okay. So the next thing I could do, this is actually still toed out a bit, right? But not much. So we don't need to go a whole nother turn. I'm just going to go, you know, it probably really might only need like a quarter. Okay, so I go here. I'm going to go like a quarter of a turn. And a quarter of a turn. Let's see where we're at on that one. There we go. That's a literal 63 and a half. And here. Oh. What did I do there? Oh, I'm like 65. Look, I was on the wrong tread groove. I was over here. That was wrong. 63 and a half. 63 and a quarter. All right, now let's discuss. Now, I'm 63 and a quarter in the front, 63 and a half in the back. I'm a bit toed in. I actually overshot that. That's okay. Just going to come back here and thread it in a little bit now, right? Right, if you think about it, I'm toed in, so I need to draw my heel inward. And because the tie rod's on the heel side, cool. Sometimes the tie rod's up here. Not real common, but all right. So I'm going to actually go back in that full quarter in case I was tripping, which is possible. It's about a quarter right there. Okay, here we go. I'm starting to get too many things in my pockets. Okay, right on that edge, just like before. All right, 63. What is that? 1, 2, 3. 63 3/8 back here. Come on, baby. 1, 2, 3. That's like right on it. 63. 1, 2, 3/8. All right. I'm really happy with that. I'm gonna lock those lock nuts down. Sometimes when you go to lock the lock nuts down, it can tend to turn a little. So by the time I go to spin this, and I'll go to do that, and you can see some of the old thread that was really clean showing, so you know it's definitely sitting in a different spot, which is okay. So this wasn't just simply counting the threads. As you can see, we are doing a little bit more of a corrective measurement as well. All right, those ones tight. I won't do super repetitive. I'm just gonna pull that tape measure exactly the same. If I'm still 63 3/8 in the back and 63 3/8 in the front, I'm rocking. If I'm not, I'll loosen up that lock nut. I'll do a little fine adjustment. Sometimes it's about predictive measurement. You stay. So if I loosen this and it messes my adjustment up, I need to kind of figure out like which way I need to overcompensate for when I tighten it, right? Just play around with this, make sure you get it pretty good. Then of course I'm gonna hit those grease fittings. I've not greased it, done the grease zerk fittings, but after that, if these numbers are good, this thing is good. It won't wear tires. Assuming that the steering wheel was straight, your steering wheel will still be straight. If your steering wheel is crooked, like kind of the way to do it is to figure out which way the steering wheel needs to go. And let's say in this case, this steering shaft, I believe, doesn't have other splines, but a lot of the Japanese and Korean do. You pull this shaft off and you level the steering wheel, get these straight forward and pop it on the spline. Or the other thing I could do is if the steering wheel's off to the left, picture like you pull the steering wheel to the right and now it's straight, but now your toe is like this. You'd actually have to extend this tie rod in and draw this tie rod end in, and you just do it the same amount. Maybe one turn loosen, one turn tighten, and that will pull both wheels the same direction, but it won't mess up your total toe. Okay, so this is kind of like a janky shoestring alignment. That's what we call it, shoestring, a tape measure alignment, if you will. All right, but that's the end of the lesson. And the final part of the lesson, remember that measurement we did? You need to really check it on the ground, okay? So, whoops, my tape popped off. This one's a little tough. If you look, 63 and what do we got? Just over a half. Yeah, I'm gonna call that at, oh, what the heck is that? 9/16? 63 9/16. And let's measure the front. And this can change, but it shouldn't. Like your camber changes a lot when you lower it. Your toe shouldn't change, but let's see what we got. Oof, a little too short. All right, this is tough to do one-handed. See, it's just over a half. I'd say 63 9/16. So this thing's good, but you do want to verify that on the ground because especially some of the trucks and stuff, they move a lot. All right. And if it's good, you're done. And if it's not, yeah, you got to roll under there and try to adjust it while it's on the ground. That's pretty rough. And that's part of the reason, you know, professionally, we would put this on the alignment rack with the turntables, with the laser. You know, we can get this really dialed in, and also we can customize how much toe we want. We're just trying to set it to 0 right now. If you want a little bit of toe in, you'd make the front measurement just a hair shorter, the rear measurement just a hair more. But you know, if you're trying to save money, that's probably the only reason you're watching this video. You probably don't want to pay for an alignment. So I got videos on how to do the laser alignment. If you want, check them out. All right, there you go.